Can we please stop making movies based on cult comic books? If George Lucas couldn't pull it off in '86 with Howard the Duck, quite possibly the greatest comic satire of all time, why did anyone think Edgar Wright could do any better with Scott Pilgrim? The comic itself was semi-enjoyable, an amalgam of Western post-adolescent situations mixed with an Eastern manga aesthetic resulted in a quirky, sometimes charming narrative. Unfortunately, the movie retains almost none of this charm, and if it does, I couldn't notice because I was too busy being distracted by what was clearly a 2-hour commercial championing one of the most vile quote-unquote counterculture movements since the end of World War II. Yes, I'm talking about the hipster, those uneducated retail-employed aesthetes of gentrification who get off on wearing skinny jeans, free Wi-Fi, and loving the shit out of Animal Collective. I mean, it's so obvious, from Michael Cero's usual shtick of the bumbling adolescent to Jason Schwartzman's casting to the quote-unquote indie soundtrack, this movie is obviously made for what adbusters deemed the dead end of Western civilization. I feel bad for kids of this decade. In the 80s, there were the two Coreys. In the 90s, we had Leo. Kids today, they have Michael Cera. Quite possibly the tamest, most understanding lead in the history of modern cinema. But hey, hipster girls love his vulnerability and non-threatening demeanor, and the guys can relate to his awkwardness. And that is why he's in this goddamn movie. And what is it with hipsters and their love of Wes Anderson? The man makes one good film 10 years ago and repeats himself with the same irony-filled, emotionally muted formula. Yet, hipsters continue to see these movies in droves. It's why the execs made sure the movie had an Anderson regular who all the hipsters will recognize from his beloved movies of the past. The worst offense, however, is the soundtrack. Penned by Nigel Godrich and Beck, it's just an affront to my ears. Beck has not played a relevant note in nearly 15 years, and mind you, that note was sampled by the Dust Brothers. But you know what? Hipsters love Beck, so the execs featured him prominently on the soundtrack. Maybe Kurt Cobain knew what he was doing. When grunge became a fashion statement, he knew punk was dead. 15 years later, in an even more commercialized, commodified world, let's not be so easily fooled. Hipsters are nothing but an update of the whole punk is fashion statement thing. A lifestyle you can put on a clothes hanger and buy at the Gap, or project on a screen and call it Scott Pilgrim versus the world.